Hi, everyone. I'm Christy with Tuleyome. I will add people as they trickle in, but it's 7:01, so we should probably get going. I know Gowan has a lot to say. So hopefully you were able to either catch the first part of her presentation or have seen it on the Tuleyome YouTube channel. I know I think it's been posted. If not, it will be shortly. And then that link will go out in our next e-blast. So you'll be able to find both of Gowan's presentations. So hopefully you're familiar with Tuleyome, but we have a couple properties that actually have mountain lions on them. So this is really kind of close to my heart. And I know it is Gowan's also. So I will hush myself. And if you could just keep yourselves muted and you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat and Gowan can either answer them as she goes, or if it's better, we can pick them up at the end. So I'll let you decide, Gowan, how that feels better for you. And without further ado, welcome to Tuleyome's Nature and You lecture series, and let Gowan Batist take it away.
Thanks. Thanks everybody for logging on. I'm not sure how many folks here got to do the part one, but just to quickly go over it, we are going to on here. We are going to go through some like really basic one-on-one stuff, but very fast. We're going to kind of speed run some biology and geographic information, and then we'll get into talking about coexistence. So my name is Gowan Batist. I'm the Coexistence and Advocacy Coordinator for the Mountain Lion Foundation, which is a national nonprofit. We work all over the country and obviously have a lot to do here in California. This is a particularly special region because we have actually some of the best protections for mountain lions, but also some really varying conditions impacting mountain lions across the state. So to talk about, what's going to get discussed here tonight, we're going to briefly talk about mountain lion behavior and biology, the history of mountain lions in California, their current legal status, their ecological importance. We'll talk about ranching, rangeland management, and we'll talk a little bit about scale. Feel free to chime in the chat if you want to share a little bit about your scale. Do you live in a neighborhood on a wildlife corridor? Are you, ranching on thousands of acres? Do you have a backyard homestead? Coexistence factors into all of those different contexts. And we have different tools that we can use to coexist with these animals. And for my background and approach, I am a 5th generation Mendocino County rancher and agrarian, and these are my sheep. I have been trying to teach them about shepherding for years. It's like their reading comprehension is very low. And what we do is we are a contract grazing operation, which means we move around California. So this is not, just something that I'm talking about theoretically. This is something that we're doing all the time with a flock of sheep on context from highly traveled park properties, such as land conservancies that have public access, as well as like private sanctuary land that is very remote and isolated. Mountain lions exist both places. We have mountain lions on game cameras on public hiking trails that are frequented every day, and we have mountain lions on game cameras on land that the public never sees and doesn't have access to. So they're here all over the place. So to talk about the mountain lion briefly, they're Puma concolor, which means of uniform color. Cougar, puma, panther, catamount, ghost cat, they are ubiquitous all over this continent. They've been extirpated from parts of the eastern United States, although they may be returning. But essentially, if you're on North American soil, you're in mountain lion territory. They have been here for at least tens of thousands of years and co-evolved alongside large Pleistocene predators and alongside humans for millennia. They have a weight range from about 120 to 220 pounds. They're the most active at dusk and dawn. So they're crepuscular. That's the word for that. And they're an obligate carnivore. So they're a lot like, a big house cat in that their whole diet is meat. They're going to sleep all day, and then they're going to zoom around as soon as the sun goes down. Behaviorally, they mostly prey on deer, but they can have really widely varying diets. They're opportunists. They're solitary. We used to think that they were a lot more solitary, and now we have the technology to actually observe them in a less disruptive way and see that they actually have quite complex social behavior. They're intelligent and they're curious. They avoid us. Oftentimes, if you've been out in nature, if you've been out hiking, a mountain lion has probably seen you and you've probably never seen them. They go out of their way to give us a wide berth. And part of that may be their evolutionary niche during the Pleistocene, where they were experiencing being hunted by much larger predators, as well as being a predator themselves. So they don't really act like they're the top of the food chain, even though they're the biggest cat around right now. So mountain lions are crucial to ecosystems. They are an umbrella species. What that means, and what that means in the context of climate change, what that means in the context of California right now, is that environments that have mountain lions in them tend to be healthier than those that don't. These photos are from a study by Ripple and Beshta from 2006, which is really fascinating. They're looking at state parks that have mountain lion presence that's documented versus that do not. And what they found is that there is an increase in biodiversity at every single trophic level, from beetles to invertebrates to waterways. So there was a pretty famous article that came out about how wolves change rivers. Well, mountain lions have some of the same impact. And part of that is through improving the health of ungulate herds. They can also improve the health of humans. There's another really interesting study that came out of Ohio University that is written up really beautifully in Mark Elbrock's recent book, The Cougar Conundrum, that talks about the economic and loss of life impact of reintroducing mountain lions to the eastern United States. And what the scientists found is that it would actually save potentially more than 100 lives, human lives, and also save millions of dollars simply because of reducing deer vehicle strikes. So mountain lions are part of engineering diverse, healthy ecosystems. So mountain lions and humans. Humans benefit from mountain lions in a lot of ways: improved ecosystem function, wildlife watching, healthier deer population, fewer car strikes to humans. You're much more likely to actually have your life saved by the presence of a mountain lion statistically than to be injured or killed by a mountain lion. Although they are large, powerful cats and they do have the potential to hurt or kill humans, they almost never do. There's also some evidence, although there's more study needed, but there's some preliminary data that shows that they could actually help reduce Lyme disease and chronic wasting disease in deer as well, because they seem to preferentially target animals that are impacted by that. There's also a lot of perceived problems with human and mountain lion proximity. Encounters in urban areas, especially during droughts. So all wildlife perceived conflicts and encounters tend to increase during drought. And we can talk about that a little bit more later, but essentially they go where they have to go. So we may be more likely to see them when there's wildfires moving them out of their area, or when there's drought that's impacting the movement of their prey. So also there's the use of home cameras. So there's a perception that there's an increase in mountain lion population. I think the reality, it's much more likely that there's an increase in readily available, affordable home security cameras. That the mountain lions were always there. They were always occasionally walking through neighborhoods, even across people's back porches, but they were never seen on video before. There's a recent news article of a mountain lion drinking out of a swimming pool in Visalia that, made headlines, that made news. Mountain lions have probably been drinking out of swimming pools in Visalia all along, but now we have Ring cameras. There's also a perception that mountain lions reduce ungulate populations that hunters don't necessarily want reduced. In particular, in other parts of the country, there have been a lot of worry about bighorn sheep and that mountain lions are going to kill all the bighorn sheep, which are, of course, a protected species. And then livestock depredation. Typically, and we're going to dig into coexistence for the rest of this talk, but what I'd like to start with is that I think that the perception of the problem of depredation is much bigger than the actual problem. And we'll dig into some numbers and look at why that might be. So California mountain lions and law. So California is really special in that mountain lions are not classified as a game species here. Hunting of mountain lions is illegal in California. So after decades of a brutal bounty system, we're now the only state that bans sport hunting. So what that bounty system means is that until 1963, you could send in a pair of mountain lion ears and actually get compensated by the state for killing that mountain lion. Individual mountain lion hunters often bragged about killing as many as 500 mountain lions. There's some pretty rough archival footage of bringing in whole families of mountain lions and being paid for that. So it's important that we kind of ground what we're talking about in context, and that until very recently there was a wholesale bounty on these animals. It's largely coming from a perception of them as inherently dangerous, although Teddy Roosevelt, the president, who was a famous big game hunter, was famously very disparaging of them. He was very disappointed by how non-confrontational they were. And they called them like craven and cowardly because, when he cornered them, they would try to run away rather than fight. So that's really what we're talking about here, is an animal that really mostly wants to be left alone, that would rather run away from us than fight with us. So what we have in California, instead of a sport hunting system, is we have a 3-strike rule. CDFW, it's California Department of Fish and Wildlife, has regulations controlling actions taken against lions for depredation of domestic animals. So they will require non-lethal methods such as hazing to be used before a lethal permit will be granted typically. And an investigation is required. This is a big change. There's very low literacy about these laws in the ranching community. A lot of folks who have been working on rangeland for decades have not kept pace with a lot of these laws, some of which passed in 2014. There's a belief that if you're on agriculturally zoned land and you're running a ranching operation, that you can shoot predators pretty much at will. That's not true. You can actually be prosecuted for shooting mountain lions without following this process. So if a lion is killed in immediate self-defense or defense of livestock, it must be caught in the act, and that must be followed by an immediate call to CDFW, who will essentially issue you a verbal short-term permit for that action that you just took in an immediate self-defense, followed by an autopsy and investigation. So the reality is that now we have these laws, some of them very recent, and they're very rarely followed or enforced. And we now really, what we need is a higher level of literacy and understanding, both by the public, the ranching community, and also the homesteading community. I've had several conversations with CDFW employees who've quoted me numbers, I think probably just off their gut rather than off of actual gathered data, but between 70 and 80% is what I've been told of folks who are calling in about these issues are suburban homesteaders, people with pets who are living on the wildlife fringe. They're not commercial ranchers. So this is definitely an issue that is not just an issue of commercial agriculture or agribusiness, but is a urban wildlife interface, small homestead, and kind of backyard issue. So remember how we talked about depredation and this process of investigation and autopsy. So in 2013, CDFW, again, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, did release this study showing that from 2006 to 2012, only 25% of mountain lions who were actually killed with depredation permits actually had remains of pets or livestock in their stomachs. These depredation permits, even when they're followed legally and assiduously, are very random. Mountain lions have large territories, sometimes spanning, many square miles. And it's as likely as not that a lethal permit is not going to actually trap the offending mountain lion. So if you think about that, as many as 75% of these cats that get killed actually for, taking livestock or pets weren't actually the ones that did it. So lethal control is indiscriminate. It has negative implications on the whole rest of the community ecology, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And there's really not a lot of evidence that it's effective. So this is one of my favorite charts, and your screen might be a little too small to see this. So this comes from Cheetah Conservation Botswana, who I love. And I definitely wanted to kind of bring them into this conversation and acknowledge that really nobody in the world is doing ranch and rangeland management alongside wild carnivores better than African pastoralists are. So this is Cheetah Conservation Botswana. There's also some really cool projects going on in Zimbabwe. So if you look at this chart, we have predators here ranging from domestic dogs, caracals, jackals, cheetahs, leopards, hyenas, lions, honey badgers, vultures. And what this chart is showing is identification signs of tracks, spores, these highlighted areas of the animal, of what parts of the body that they eat or don't eat. One of my favorites here for lion, under diagnostic criteria, massive tissue damage, which is just pretty ominous. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up and look at this is to kind of ground us in reality here, that the human cultures who have coexisted in pastoralist communities the longest are in Africa. And they're successfully raising livestock, successfully raising families alongside this whole suite of more than a dozen large predators. So there's absolutely no reason why we can't do it in North America with a much shorter list of overall smaller animals. An African lion has got absolutely, orders of magnitude more power and destructive potential than a mountain lion does in North America. So if they can do it, we can do it. And another thing to look at here in terms of like the parts eaten charts and all these diagnostic things is one thing that happens in my profession a lot is people sending me just gory pictures of dead animals with like, how could you possibly be advocating for coexistence with these animals when they do these terrible things? And a lot of the time looking at those pictures, it doesn't look like a mountain lion to me. Oftentimes it looks like this guy here in the first column, a domestic dog. So part of it is literacy with, when we look at a dead animal, being able to identify, what actually caused that, what actually, what animal are we talking about working alongside here? So I also love how just brief and effective, this little graphic of this keeled over goat. It's very sad, but like why killing carnivores does not work. Not only is the indiscriminate killing of carnivores by shooting, poisoning, or trapping a threat to endangered species and the environment, it provides only a very short-term remedy for the farmer rather than a long-term cure. The killing of one carnivore simply creates an empty territory for another one to move into, which merely prolongs the costly cycle of carnivore livestock conflict. And, honestly, that is the whole premise of what we're going to talk about, is that in the short term, lethal removal, it doesn't work. It's indiscriminate, and it has long range negative repercussions. So this is a really, so this table is from the USDA and APHIS. So to kind of ground in that, the USDA and APHIS specifically, this is the government program that actually will provide these lethal trapping services. So these are people who, when counties have a contract with a USDA trapper, it's going through APHIS. So these are their own numbers. These are folks who they provide lethal removal of predators as they're living. And if you look at this, what they say in California in 2015, only 1.1% of death losses from predators to mature cows occurred. So that's a pretty damning number. So to say it the other way, when an adult cow died, an unplanned death of an adult cow in California in 2015, 98.9% of the time it was a cause other than a predator. For a calf, 5.8% of unplanned deaths were losses to predators. If we go down to the bottom chart, how many of these ranchers and landowners are actually using proactive non-lethal tools? If you look at beef cattle, only 20% of beef cattle producers use any kind of non-lethal tool. So I feel like a lot of the time when we talk about coexistence and we talk about predator management, we talk about it as something that is an absolute necessity that impacts everybody, that is one of the biggest threats that the ranching community is facing. And really the numbers just don't support that. For sheep, which are a much smaller animal, less able to defend themselves, basically nature's tater tots, the numbers are higher. About 19% of losses of mature animals in 2014 of sheep were from predators. But that still means that 80% were from a cause other than predators. If you look at the death losses to calves, they're a lot higher. It's still less than half, but about 45% of lambs lost came from predators according to this chart, but it doesn't actually specify which predators. And being a professional long-term sheep rancher, my guess is that a significant amount of those are ravens. So again, when we talk about depredation, when we talk about lethal removal of an apex predator, especially a protected apex predator like mountain lions that are slow reproducing, slow to raise their young, and we talk about that as a necessity of ranching in California, the reality is that it's not the biggest threat to the ranching community. Looking at sheep producers in 2014, only 58% used any non-lethal tool, just over half. That means just about under half of all sheep ranchers aren't using any non-lethal methods at all. It's interestingly, the goat producers interviewed in 2014, 93% of them were using non-lethal tools. Goat people in California actually tend to take really great care of their livestock, which is kind of cool to see. If you look at the breakdowns, the kinds of things that they're talking about are guardian dogs and fencing, frequent checks, other non-lethal. These are very, very simple tools, and there are actually a lot more tools in this. So this is even an incomplete list, but just to keep that in mind, like most ranchers who are in business are using few to none of these tools. And while they definitely may experience losses to predators, it's probably not driving them to the brink the way that sometimes comes up in public discourse about this issue. And that's according to the people who are the most strongly in favor of trapping who put this study together. And I think when we're talking about that, it's important to talk about the other side of the coin as well, which are ranchers the main threat to carnivores? Ranch lands, the semi-natural habitats with a biodiverse landscape, are really critical refugia for native animals under more development. So this is a chart that comes from the ECA that essentially shows the grassland species diversity that decreases with conversion to intensive agriculture. So I want to be really clear where my loyalty lies in this conversation. I don't actually think that supporting crop agriculture and a vegetarian diet over ranching is necessarily the way to protect mountain lions. And that's my personal opinion, not the opinion of everyone else in the Mountain Lion Foundation. But if you look at the threats to movement, to dispersal, to a healthy prey population, conversion of habitat is an incredibly significant loss. Even the most gun-rabid Elmer Fudd rancher is only going to be able to catch so many mountain lions in his day. But once natural habitat is converted into housing or into a soybean field, it's gone forever. And that is violence too. So let's keep this all in mind, that we don't necessarily have to set ranching and conservation in polar opposite to each other in these conversations. So regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is a system of principles and practices that increases biodiversity, enriches soil, improves watersheds, enhances ecosystem services. So this is terragenesis and soil centric. So in showing a conversion from a former crop field to a diverse pasture. So when you look at these two photos side by side, think about which photo would a mountain lion want to be in. And the answer to that is they want to be in the photo that the deer are in. And deer would much rather be in the photo on the right. So something that is really important to me when I'm talking to my peers and also talking to other folks about rangeland management is the presence of a large carnivore is a marker of success. And we need to start owning that and promoting that. If your environment can support an apex predator, you're doing everything right. And so looking at conflict, even discomfort in proximity as a marker of success is a cultural shift that really needs to happen. Thinking about agricultural land rather than a unit of productive measurement, where you put seeds in and you take crops out, or you put animals on and you take animals out, and instead looking at it as participation in a complex community ecology is a shift that really has to happen and is past due in California. So this is a great graphic from Kiss the Ground that kind of illustrates what we're talking about. We increase biodiversity, we increase ecosystem function, we create habitat. So if you're having coexistence concerns, either on your farm, on your ranch, or in your neighborhood, that's success. So we can go from that place of tension or that place of question or threat, and we can talk about the practical things to do about it. But as we do that, let's keep in mind that the fact that we're having this conversation at all is a victory and should be celebrated as such. So grazing in community spaces in California. So California is increasingly turning to an ancient solution to control wildfire, which is mobile flocks. So what that means is that the public is going to need to build some literacy about what engaging with flocks and community spaces looks like. So some of these pictures are from Kuama lamb. They're grazing fire breaks. Some of them are clearing invasive species with goats. One of those pictures, the one with the concrete floor, that's actually on a former mill site, a former industrial site that's being bioremediated. And part of clearing invasive plants off of that is with sheep. And this picture in the top right is actually me and some of my cohort moving 100 sheep down the middle of the main street in Petaluma, which a lot of these streets that used to happen every year. But where I live in Mendocino and Casper, all the sheep in the community were sheared at the community center, and Highway 1 was shut down, and all the flocks were run out in the road and walked down the road to the community center. So that is something that the public tolerated and expected in the past and may need to learn to do so again. So we talk about coexistence, and I actually think that this picture is pretty funny. So there's the myth and there's the reality. So successful ranchers are using non-lethal management. This is not just something that's being promoted by activists who don't have experience in the field. Non-lethal methods do not mean accepting a certain amount of livestock loss. Non-lethal practices are shown to be much more effective than trapping, just by the numbers, including by the trappers' numbers. The biggest threat to livestock is not native predators. Livestock die much more often from causes other than predators. Climate change and habitat conservation, on the other hand, are major threats to wildlife that ranchers can provide refugia from. So people who are advocating coexistence, one of the things that I hear about a lot is that they just love wildlife, and they're just, bleeding hearts who aren't tough enough to be in ranching. So my response to that is that this is a picture that I took, and that's literally my electric fence. And that fur on it is fur that a coyote left on it after it learned a very spicy lesson about not putting its nose on electric fence. So boundaries are okay. We don't need to necessarily hug the coyotes. We can set boundaries. We can create safe spaces for our children, for our pet dogs, for our livestock. The goal is to be able to live together productively and to have both our operations, our families, our livestock, and also their community be healthy and functional. And part of them being healthy and functional is learning that livestock are a really bad bet for them. So understanding potential wildlife encounters. So essentially, like, proactive coexistence is always going to work more effectively long-term than removal of problematic individuals. The idea that you even can have a specific problematic individual and then we'll be able to identify and trap that animal, the studies don't show that to be the case. So the idea that, okay, well, maybe generally we can do proactive management, but if we get a bad egg, we have to take that one out. Unfortunately, like, the tools we have are just not that precise. Another question that comes up a lot is, well, what about relocation? If you have a cougar that's specifically going after livestock night after night, can't we just pick it up and move it somewhere else? Really, no. Generally speaking, although that is done sometimes, the outcomes for that aren't great. Animals that are relocated tend to die, and sometimes have territorial struggles with other mountain lions in the areas they get moved into. In general, the absolute best bet for coexistence is always going to be managing the lions that you have and developing a relationship with the lions that you have in your community. So this is another graphic from Cheetah Conservation Botswana, and I just love it. So an unhappy farm is one with few trees and poor vegetation, no crawl, with livestock exposed to predators at night. You can see how, you start setting things up negatively. Low production, not enough wildlife, right? So if you think about the fact that, like, all of California is mountain lion habitat, you want to have a thriving prey population so that the mountain lions have a way to thrive as well. So if you look around your homestead, you look around your yard, are you setting yourself up for success? Are you leaving animals outside at night? There's a great exercise to, like, walk around your neighborhood or walk around your farm or your homestead and try looking at it through a deer's eyes, and then try looking at it through a mountain lion's eyes. And you'll see some things differently if you can get yourself in that headspace. The best defense that any homestead has is intact habitat for native species and a buffer between your immediate home and the wildlife species. And we can talk about specifics of how to do that. So crepuscular carnivores and domestic animals. So this graphic, it's fairly dramatic, but I think this is like old school Mountain Lion Foundation graphic. Left out overnight can mean left for dead. So lions can be active at any time. It's not an emergency to see one in the middle of the day. I sometimes get people calling that say that, like, well, I saw it, it was noon and there was a lion in this field and that must mean it's sick or it has rabies and someone needs to come and remove it. They can be around anytime. It's not an emergency if you see them during the day, but they're the most active and they're the most likely to be hunting at dawn and dusk. Leaving livestock out overnight without any protection is asking for trouble. Outdoor pets, especially small animals like cats, are both a risk to biodiversity and they're at risk to predation. So it's really important to plan for responsible shelter for farm animals during those peak hunting hours. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. I tend to hear this on two levels. Like I'll hear from people that have small homesteads, that's an economic hardship and they can't do it. And then I'll hear from people with big flocks that, oh, maybe that works for those homestead people who just have small amounts of animals, but we have, hundreds of sheep. We can't possibly bring them in at night. And there's solutions to both of those problems. They just take some planning, some proactive thought. We don't have a barn that we are generally putting animals in every night. We're a rotational grazing operation. Our sheep move around, and oftentimes they're grazing on land that is thousands of acres in the middle of nowhere where there's no infrastructure. And we can still protect animals at night using mobile tools, which we'll talk about. So what makes a successful shelter? Walls, roof, floors, and doors. So mountain lions can climb. They can climb really high. So a structure needs to have a roof that can hold at least 200 pounds. Mountain Lion Foundation has put together detailed plans for how to build your own on their website, essentially using dog kennel panels and a metal roof frame. They're pretty affordable and they're modular. You can make them as long as you want in 10-foot increments. You can put multiple of them in different locations around your homestead if you're moving animals regularly. And then on the left, that's a picture from our brush goat abatement grazing program, where if we're moving goats around and, we don't have a hardscape shelter and it's a brushy area that isn't great to build an electric night pen, we'll just use a livestock trailer. And it's just a livestock trailer with a sliding door and they go in it at night. So that's easy. On our home farm, we've kept several retired livestock trailers that weren't roadworthy anymore going for several more useful years by just moving them around and using them as night shelters in different paddocks. So that's a solution that can work great for a small flock of up to around 15 or 20 goats. And then I did need to put in, the context because, I'm context lady on the right side here, which is you have to use the right panels for the right job. So a lightweight chain link panel isn't ram proof. And this is a detail of a chain link pen that I put together that then got taken apart by a ram. So context is important. Poultry, pygmy goats, probably great. 200-pound ram, not so much. So the difference between exclusion and deterrence. So exclusion is removing access. Deterrence is changing the carnivore's mind. So exclusion, if you're in a neighborhood, exclusion would be bringing your cat in at night. That mountain lion is then excluded from getting to prey on your cat because it's not outside where the mountain lion can get it. It's putting your chickens in a secure coop. Deterrence is generally speaking, freaking them out. Wild animals avoid things that they don't understand. They don't like novelty. Deterrent methods can deter carnivores. Some of them work better in the short term. All deterrents work best when they're periodically changed. If you leave a flashing light in one place for long enough, animals learn that nothing bad happens to them when the light flashes at them. So when you're using deterrents, some of them are best used when you're having a specific concern about a problem. Like for example, right now we're lambing. And so I have fox lights, which are randomly flashing lights that come on at dusk. They have a light sensor and they stay on all night and then they turn themselves off and charge with solar panels all day. And those are great, but I don't use them all the time. I'm just using them right now while we're lambing. So it talks about electronet fencing in here, flagery, basically there's the world of the peer studied tools that we can talk about, things that have documented effectiveness, like foxlights do. There's been studies done around the world in Australia and actually here in California at the Hopland Research and Extension Center, showing that when foxlights are used, even when predators are present, like coyotes are still present on the landscape, this is the species they were looking at, particularly at Hopland, predation goes down, and sometimes it goes down to 0. That's great. And then there's the land of the not peer reviewed and things that people are using, such as blow up lawn art. I know of several people who have told me anecdotally that they were having predator problems, and then they put a 12-foot tall Christmas T-Rex with a fan and lights that played Christmas carols and next to their barn, and they never had a problem again. Because, and quite a few people on forums and message boards using Halloween decorations, which are actually designed to startle people and also work on wildlife. So I'm actually been trying to, get the time and also make a convincing enough argument that I actually need to get a 12-foot light up ghost lawn art that like goes ooh and wiggles around for science, and set that up with some game cameras and see what happens. But so far I haven't been able to talk the team into it. But there's also this picture over here is bell collars, and there's a lot of evidence that bell collars work quite well at just creating novelty and distraction and alarming a predator, which can give them enough time to change their mind. So guardian animals are something that we could spend hours talking about. So with acknowledgement that this is a massive topic, I want to just take a second with it. This is Chago with a baby lamb here on the left. This is my dog. And then over here on the right, there's a herding dog, and Chago again, who's a livestock guardian dog. They're not the same at all. They're not interchangeable. Not all dogs can be livestock guardian dogs. Not all dogs can be herding dogs. It is not about how you train them entirely. A lot of it is genetic. And then there's a long-term commitment to training. So to talk about guardian animals, they're specifically bred and trained to protect. They can be prey themselves. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they pick up a Great Pyrenees puppy who's 10 weeks old and they throw it out in the field. And that is not how any culture that has co-evolved with these dogs raises them. It seems to be a uniquely American thing. And it seems to be kind of a machismo thing. So these dogs should not be feral. They should be handleable. There's some old timers who won't pet them, who think it will make them not good livestock guardian dogs. That's not the case at all. They can be loved pets and members of the family and also do their jobs. And it's important that misinformation is time to let go of that. They require care, specialized training, specialized insurance. They're also the most effective. They're up to 98% effective as a deterrent. Mountain lions in their right mind aren't going to try to take lambs from a pair of 120-pound Great Pyrenees. They are better at cost-benefit analysis than that. So they are very effective. We have not lost a single lamb to a coyote since we got these dogs. And we are in a really, really high traffic area. Before we got the dogs, we had a couple seasons where we lost about 25% of our lambs. My dog Azra has done grazing contracts on hundreds of acres, rocky, steep land, tons of coyotes, tons of mountain lions, 140 sheep and their lambs. And we've done that contract twice now and haven't lost a single lamb either time. So she's at 100%, which is pretty darn good. Other visual and auditory deterrents. Different than livestock guardian dogs, use novelty, light, sound, movement. There's actually a device called a critter getter, which is like a big squirt bottle for kitties, but like a massive squirt bottle for mountain lions. It's a motion activated sprinkler head. Some of them also make a high pitched noise. Those are very effective in a small space, in your backyard. Those are very effective. In general, though, flashing lights, auditory sounds, they do tend to lose effectiveness over time. So there is a study that shows that mountain lions will even leave a recent kill if they hear recordings of human voices versus a control recording. But if you're playing a recording of human voices 24/7 for 2 months, eventually the mountain lions are going to learn that nothing bad happens to them when they hear that recording. So dogs, although they represent a massive investment of time, energy, training, and they also represent a certain amount of legal liability because they're a big animal that you have to manage with sometimes around the public, they do tend to be the most effective single deterrent. Other deterrents, they're cheaper, they're sometimes easier to use. You can stack functions with them and use them together in multiple different ways, but they do tend to lose effectiveness over time. They're best introduced when there's a specific problem happening and then later either changed or removed. So temporary versus permanent fences. This is where we'll talk about electric night pens and bomas or crawls, which is usually bomas in Zimbabwe and crawls in Botswana. But it's also just an ancient system that exists everywhere. Actually, on one of the grazing contracts we did, there was still the remains of a stone crawl built by Basque sheep farmers when they were grazing there about 100 years ago. So this is something that people all over the world have been doing for a really long time. So at the Mountain Lion Foundation in general, and in my experience, we don't really recommend permanent fences to keep mountain lions out, just because they're cost prohibitive, and even then they don't always work. So when you look at these fences to keep a mountain lion out, 8-foot T-post with 6 foot of horse fencing with a 2-foot overhang, barbed and electric wires facing outward. And you can't have a tree within 15 feet of it because they can jump more than 15 feet horizontally. And even then it still might not work. So mountain lions, like, if you've ever tried to keep a cat off the top of your fridge, they're cats. They can jump, they can climb. Hardscape fences don't work that well. In contrast, these portable electric fences, which you can roll up and hold with one hand, they're only about 4 feet high. They move in the wind. They really freak pretty much all wildlife out, and they deliver an electric shock. So in general, I find that they're pretty effective. I have had a mountain lion try to cross one, not knowing what it was, and very much regret its life choice. It was fine. The fence was not fine. It actually did break the fence when it ran away. So that is something to remember about these electric fences too, is that sometimes when they work, they still break. So, you have to keep that in mind with your design system, as you may need to replace them a couple of times while you educate your local wildlife. So what we do, and these are from our grazing contracts, these pictures, is we'll make a paddock, usually between like 2 and 5 acres, depending on what we're doing, graze the animals in that during the day. And then if there's a lot of concern about predator presence, or especially if there's a lot of brush cover in a field so the dogs can't see all the corners of the field at night as well, I'll make a smaller contained area with very hot fence and bring all the sheep into it at night. So maybe a 1/4 acre. And that's a boma. That's all a boma is. It's just a small defensible space that the dogs can see the entirety of. You can make it with thorn bushes, you can make it with chain link panels, you can make it with rocks, and you can make it with solar electric mesh. But the principle is just a more protected space for those most vulnerable hunting hours. I've never had any loss of an animal in a night pen. Even in, very remote areas. And the presence of wildlife is not necessarily an indicator that you are having a conflict. I mean, at this contract where these pictures were taken, we were getting coyotes, mountain lions on game camera all the time, almost every night. And we didn't have a single loss. Back on our home farm, we actually had a 3-legged bear that was around for a while, Lefty, as we named him, who got hit by a car on our highway and was recovering and was trying to eat garbage and, peeling the bark off pine trees and eating beetle grubs and things like that. And our sheep were there in electric fence at night. And, normally an injured animal is one that I would be really concerned about for creating a conflict, because when they're injured, they do tend to be more desperate and they will try things that they otherwise wouldn't. But he hung around until he recovered and went back up into the state forest and never did anything bad to our livestock. In contrast, we've had neighbors who had their barn doors ripped off and all their alpacas killed by a bear. So my point being that, a physical shelter isn't always going to be perfect. Sometimes a psychological shelter can actually be more effective, but that coexistence in this space is a relationship. It's not a mechanical system that you set once and then you're done with. It's an ongoing process. And, I often hear that it's too expensive, it's too labor intensive. And, the answer that I normally have to that is, well, yeah, it does cost a little bit more labor, it does cost a little bit more materials. But if a number of animals that you're losing to predators is a problem for you, maybe it's worth it. So that's the thing that needs to be balanced, is the economic loss, the emotional loss, the stress of regularly losing animals to predators when you're not doing any kind of proactive coexistence, versus the cost of proactive coexistence. And personally, I feel like it's pretty compelling that it's very much worth it to do the proactive coexistence. So, a safe world for lions and for lambs. So we need to respect the needs of wildlife. We don't need to be afraid of them. We need to be aware of what they need and the ways that they move through the world that are different from us. The landscape that we live on is safer with lions in it than it is without it. And coexistence is a relationship. And those are the big takeaways that I've developed from my time in the field alongside these animals and seeing them regularly. I think that it's an important thing for everybody who is living in mountain lion territory, which, if you're in California, is all of us. But, to keep in mind that, we have these needs for coexistence. So don't feed wildlife, don't feed deer. A reason why mountain lion sightings tend to be worse in drought years is ungulates that mountain lions eat. Will seek out irrigated lawns, irrigated pasture. They'll seek out areas that are defended from fire, and the mountain lions are going to go where they go. So recently there have been more mountain lion sightings in urban areas or in urban interface areas, probably because they're following deer, including a young mountain lion who followed a deer into a suburban neighborhood, was getting chased by an animal control officer with a sedation dart gun, and ended up running into a hair salon trying to get away. And, that lion didn't hurt anybody, but, it did run into a hair salon. So there's more and more opportunities for conflict to happen as prey animals come closer to humans, trying to seek refuge from harsh environmental conditions, trying to get away from fire, trying to get away from drought, trying to go where there's food. So we need to up our game a little bit, knowing that they may be coming closer to us than they would if conditions were good out in the wildland. So don't feed wildlife, landscape for safety, plant native plants. It's really important to plant native plants, but remove dense and low-lying vegetation around your house. That's important for fire safety anyway. And you don't want deer hanging out right next to your front porch, because that's how you get deer. That's how you get mountain lions on your front porch. Keep your pets secure. Please don't have outdoor cats. Bring your small dogs in at night. Wait till the sun is fully up before letting them out. Bring a flashlight with you. Walk them on leash. Have an air horn. An air horn is the absolute most effective tool. I've blown an air horn at a mountain lion and worked beautifully. It absolutely evaporated. It was very upset with me for doing that. I was very scared by my $15 tiny air horn. So highly recommend it. If you're hiking, if you're biking, keep in mind when and where you're going. Go in groups. Don't go right at daybreak. Bring an air horn with you. Wear bright colors. Don't record mountain lions with your cell phone, please. There's that famous interaction with the mother mountain lion in Utah, although a lot of news agencies clipped out the part at the beginning of the video where the man in question was approaching her cubs and filming them. this mother mountain lion proceeded to bluff charge him all the way back down the trail. And a lot of people characterize that as stalking behavior or hunting behavior. That was not stalking or hunting, that was bluffing. She had these huge, big scooped paws and was stomping at the ground and being very scary. And the second he threw a handful of rocks at her, she ran away. But, you know, he was recording this whole thing and his attention was on his phone, and, you know, he kind of let her approach him for a little bit too long, in my opinion. So a mountain lion is not necessarily immediately going to run away from you if you see them on the trail, and it doesn't mean that they're hunting you. Mountain lions are cautious. They need to have enough space to feel safe turning away from you to run. If you're too close to a mountain lion, they won't necessarily back off, but that doesn't mean that they're not intimidated by you. It actually might mean that they're more intimidated by you because they don't feel safe turning around to flee. I've come face to face with a mountain lion that I was too close to for the lion to feel comfortable turning around. And what we did in that case is increase distance slowly, back away slowly, be loud, be big. When you've got enough space between you that the mountain lion can turn, blow an air horn at it. It's in their best interests to be afraid of us because their territory is huge. Even if you're friendly to them, that doesn't mean your neighbor is. So don't let them get comfortable being around you. The other the other piece to all of this is, you know, really think about like how much you can tolerate as far as, you know, if you live on, you know, 10 acres, maybe having deer, you know, out at the edges of your property is great. And you can provide space for wildlife to move across your landscape. If you're in a small neighborhood and you have kids in your backyard, then maybe you can't. And you might choose different options depending on that context. So, you know, we can talk about all of this on a case-by-case basis. I'm happy to answer specific questions. But ultimately, what I hope everybody took away from that deep dive is that, you know, we're sharing this environment. It's perfectly possible to have a successful ranching business, to be an avid outdoors person, and to just never see a mountain lion. You're lucky if you get to see them. And it's absolutely possible to coexist. What I would really love is for people to see having a mature, settled female mountain lion on their rangeland as a success story. And it is your best and safest bet. So again, you know, we're going to train the mountain lions we have. We're not going to lethally remove them and continue a cycle of transient juveniles. Paradoxically, in the aftermath of a lethal removal, there tends to be more mountain lion activity on a given stretch of land, not less, because that territorial vacuum increases juvenile transient presence, and juvenile transients are more likely to be in conflict with humans than mature adults. So that's ultimately the goal. You know, define what success is, and you know, make a good conversation out of it.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Christy. This was really fun, and thanks everybody. I hope I didn't put anybody off with the whole, you know, rumen removal thing, but definitely please feel free to reach out to us. You know, Mountain Lion Foundation is here to be a resource, and I love talking to people before they have a problem, but I'm also just as happy to talk to people after they're having a problem too. So, you know, my contact information is on this presentation. Please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Gowan.